Reddit, what is your best teenage F-up story? Story 1. I sent my girlfriend a funny text. Yo, let's do anal tonight. Hashtag anal Fridays. We both knew it was a joke, but her dad was so overly protective that it didn't matter. I got an immediate call from her phone, and all I heard was her dad screaming at the top of his lungs. He said, "I know how you young people think. You do it in the butt to avoid pregnancy." It was easily the most embarrassing 10 minutes of my life. Story 2. When I was 12 years old, I had a moment of recklessness that resulted in a $2,000 phone bill. I had used my grandmother's emergency cell phone to play the game Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction. When the bill arrived, my father went through every single number on it and questioned them if they knew I should not have been using the phone. Needless to say, was not my best day. Story 3. When I was 14, I didn't tell my parents about an early release school day and instead went to the movies with a guy. At the movie theater, we were making out heavily when suddenly someone tapped his shoulder. It was one of the theater workers telling us to exit the movie. As soon as we get out, mall security is waiting for us and will take us to a containment area in the mall. They accused me of giving him a blowjob in the theater, which I had never done at that point, and threatened to charge us with public indecency. Even though we denied it, they still called our parents and had them pick us up. Needless to say, I was grounded for a long time. Story 4. At 31 years old, I can't help but feel a little bit of annoyance when I see young couples making out in public. While I'm all for their love and affection, I'd prefer they keep their displays of passion a bit more subtle. After all, the last thing parents need when they just want to buy their kids some socks is to be distracted by a wild makeout session going on outside the window. So if you're going to be out there in public expressing your love, please do it respectfully. And if you can please take it back to the alleyway behind the food court where the smokers go. Finally, if you're going to make out in public, at least make sure you look presentable. Get a haircut, pull up your pants, and turn down that hip-hop music. Story 5. My friends and I threw a party at someone's house and were about to get away with it when the cops showed up. In a panicked state, my friends scattered and I foolishly ducked behind a bush in an attempt to hide. Unfortunately, someone spotted me and thought I was a dead body. This person then called the cops back, believing they had stumbled upon a murder scene. I had to lie motionless and scared for 20 long minutes with the headlights of this person's car trained on my body. Eventually, the police showed up and found me alive after giving me a light kick. To my surprise, they were surprisingly laid back and offered me a ride home. Story 6. At the age of 14, I had discovered a mischievous activity known as power boxing. So one night, I snuck into my neighbor's yard, cut off their power, and laid in wait to watch the chaos that I thought would ensue. However, nothing happened. Little did I know that they had gone on vacation and returned a week later to find their yard destroyed by the heat, their floors damaged by melted ice, and their freezer full of putrid fish. My mom soon found out that I was responsible for the damage, and I had to face up to my mistake. To my surprise, my neighbors were surprisingly understanding and forgave me on the condition that I helped them with the yard work for the summer. Story 7. My stepmom had recently inherited a beautiful, genuine Tiffany lamp from the 1880s. She placed it in a box wrapped in blankets, which she tucked away under our ping pong table. One day, as I was trying to move the table to play solo, the box got in the way, so I gave it a little shove with my foot, not expecting much. Little did I know that I had just broken something of immense value. In passing, I told my dad I broke something, to which he asked what. I had no idea, so I simply replied, "There's something glass inside that blanket box under the ping pong table." His face went pale, and he went upstairs to investigate. When he told my stepmother what had happened, I heard her scream, "What?" That night, he informed me of the tragedy I had caused. I had broken a 100-year-old lamp worth tens of thousands of dollars. My stepmother was overcome with emotion and cried for 2 days. After all, it had only been in her possession for 24 hours before one of her 5 boys shattered it. Story 8. My friends and I sneaked into the school of our arch rivals, and in a moment of mischievousness, I decided to take a colossal dump in the gymnastics foam pit. Unfortunately, we got caught and were not only sentenced to 60 days of alternative schooling, but were also required to pay the school a hefty fee of $4,500. I endured a strenuous summer job of 40 hours a week, earning only $11 an hour. Yet none of that money went to me. Story 9. A horrifying incident occurred in the very town I call home. A man was tragically caught in an explosion, resulting in the loss of both his arms and severe burns all over his body. Emergency teams rushed to his aid and transported him to the hospital, but his injury was too severe and he passed away a few hours later. In the weeks following, people reported finding pieces of the man's arms and hands scattered across 2 blocks from the blast site. Even more disturbingly, my friend's dad found a finger in his driveway. Story 10. My brother had been a real troublemaker, and it had finally caught up to him. After he was arrested for heroin possession, my dad graciously bailed him out with the condition that he stay in the house until his court case. For the duration of that time, my dad did everything he could to help him out, from buying him new clothes and taking him to the doctors and dentists to offering to take him to an outpatient rehab. Unfortunately, even after all of that, my brother still didn't bother to express his gratitude. Then one day, when my dad wasn't looking, he snuck out of the house, and my dad was so angry that he locked him out and said he was done with him. Sadly, it was only 4 days later that my dad passed away from a heart attack, and while I don't want to blame my brother for it, it's hard to deny that he was responsible for most of my father's stress. Story 11. My brother and his friends were full of excitement as they decided to shoot a propane tank wrapped in a gasoline-soaked towel in the middle of a desolate cow pasture. The spectacle resulted in an impressive bang, boom, and wow, with everyone feeling satisfied. Unfortunately, 14-year-old Tim wanted to show his friends the same spectacle and decided to replicate it in his parents' backyard, which happened to be part of a forest. The resulting bang, boom, wow resulted in a monstrous blaze that spread across more than 150 acres. In a desperate attempt to contain the fire, Tim grabbed a hose and the fire department had to be called. Fortunately, no one died and Tim's parents' house was spared, but they were held liable for the fine. Story 12. One fateful night when my parents were away, I decided to throw an epic party with at least 50 of my closest friends. What I didn't know was that one of my buddies had the brilliant idea of videotaping the entire night of debauchery. After the party was over and we'd cleaned up the mess, I thought I'd gotten away without a scratch. Little did I know, 2 days later, my mom would call me downstairs to find my little brother had put a movie in the VHS player. It was the videotape of the party, which included a couple getting it on in my parents' bed, people smoking joints in the kitchen, and even using the good crystal to play quarters. To top it all off, the couple in my parents' bed were dressed up in my little brother's Viking costume from Halloween. Story 13. My math teacher in my junior year kept failing my tests because I wouldn't show work. She told me that if I didn't get a 92% on my final test, I would be kicked out of school, private school. When she handed us the final in-Scantron form, she declared that I didn't have to show work since she knew I was going to fail. I handed in the test and made a snide comment that I'd hoped tragedy would befall her. Shockingly, 2 days later, her husband, who owned multiple farms, was decapitated by his workers. I was astounded when I got my test back and realized I had passed with a 96%. Even though I'm relieved I passed, I still feel a bit of guilt. Story 14. My friend and I had a wild idea. We decided to send a funny picture of me butt naked and only wearing socks with a jug of chocolate milk strategically covering my package to a girl as a joke. But our plan backfired when the girl started crying and then told her mom. The girl's mom became enraged and called mine and my friend's parents at 1 a.m. The next morning, my embarrassed parents made me go over to the girl's house and apologize in person. Although it was an embarrassing experience at the time, I can't help but laugh when I think about it today.